16. Father confesses to filicide. In November 2023, a distraught father called 911 from outside his home in Kendall, Florida, and confessed to killing his son. 52-year-old David Contreras also rang his family's doorbell camera and tearfully told his wife that he'd just shot their 21-year-old son, Eric. In the doorbell camera video, Contreras could be heard saying, "He's not breathing, he's dead." He also said the fighting on the way home was unbearable, indicating that he'd perhaps lost his temper during an argument. In an apparent display of utter shock and despair, Contreras covered his face with his hand and told his wife to call his brother. He also reassured her that their son's death wasn't her fault. Contreras' wife could be heard crying as she came to the realization that her husband was probably going to go to jail. Emergency responders arrived to find the victim lying dead near the front door. The property was blocked off for hours as police worked into the night to learn what had happened. Eric Contreras lived near his college in Miami, but was visiting his family for his birthday when his life was unexpectedly cut short. His father pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder and remains in custody as of late April 2024. David and his son had a contentious relationship. Just days before Eric's death, David allegedly pointed a gun at the young man, and in an incident several months before that, the frustrated father was accused of firing a gun into the ceiling of the family's home. Eric's friends told NBC Miami that the Contreras family had recently traveled to Orlando for a Disney World vacation, but they returned to Kendall due to Eric's behavior. The young man struggled with his mental health, according to David's lawyer, who said that this may have been a factor in the disagreement that led to his death. 15. Kidnapped by a crazy ex. In a disturbing act of violence that was captured on video in October 2019, 27-year-old Robert Michael Mendez could be seen abusing his ex-girlfriend outside his Arcadia, California home. He'd allegedly been holding the woman captive since the previous night when the victim tried to make a run for it. The victim made it across the street to a neighbor's house, but Mendez caught up with her and dragged her back into his home before she could alert anyone to her need for help. Harrowing footage captured by the neighbor's doorbell camera in the middle of the night showed the woman approaching the home and banging on the door. She repeatedly yelled, "No, no, no," as Mendez grabbed her by the hair and violently dragged her away. The victim continued trying to fight Mendez off as he repeatedly struck her, ordered her to get off the ground, and threatened to kill her. After the neighbor turned the video over to the police, investigators paid a visit to Mendez's home, where they found the victim suffering from significant injuries. She was taken to a hospital, and Mendez was arrested on suspicion of holding her against her will, threatening and beating her. In 2020, he pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of injuring a girlfriend or child's parent and was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. 14. Creepy clown callers. A San Antonio homeowner was left shaken when someone wearing a clown mask rang their doorbell one afternoon in August 2019. The resident wasn't home at the time, but caught a glimpse of the mysterious visitor when they received an alert on their phone from their doorbell camera. The homeowner was too scared to go on camera or reveal their identity, but they wanted to warn others about the masked stranger. In a video shared by local station KATV, the creepy caller rang the doorbell and said trick or treat. He had a large bag in his hand, and he hung around for less than a minute before he walked away. His reason for visiting the home is a mystery, but given his face covering, it was only natural for the homeowner to assume his intentions were less than innocent. Toward the end of the 40-second clip, the man looked down for several seconds as if searching on the ground for something. One social media commenter speculated that he was looking for a spare key beneath the homeowner's welcome mat. Police appealed to the public for information regarding the man's identity, but there have been no updates on the story. In a bizarre but thankfully short-lived trend that began in 2016, creepy clowns were spotted in multiple states. They're often seen in suburban neighborhoods that are typically considered safe, leaving residents of these quiet bedroom communities suddenly feeling afraid to leave the house at night or let their kids go outside unsupervised. In late 2017, a doorbell camera captured terrifying footage of someone in a clown costume slowly approaching a Green Bay, Wisconsin residence at night with a handful of black balloons. Instead of ringing the doorbell, the clown peered into the house for a few seconds before walking away. As he left, he turned around a few times and looked at the house. Nicknamed Gags by local residents, the clown had reportedly been seen in the area on previous occasions. Thankfully, America's clown trend didn't last very long, and the sightings eventually stopped in most places. 13. Pursuing predator follows woman home. In October 2021, entrepreneur and influencer Keziah Williams overheard her dog barking and noticed a strange man lurking outside her Bowie, Maryland home. Footage captured by her doorbell camera showed Williams rushing inside with her dog. Luckily, she was able to lock her doors and windows before the man tried breaking in with zip ties in his hand. In the video, the stranger could be seen putting his thumb over the camera lens in an apparent attempt to obscure its view. Williams later said that he tried opening every window and pulled her screen door with such force that he ripped off its hinges. When a neighbor stepped outside, the suspect pretended to water the flowers as if to avoid suspicion. He spent 15 minutes trying to get into the house, but it took police a half hour to respond to Williams' 911 call. Authorities arrested the suspect 3 days later. Based on the doorbell camera footage and Williams' description of the man's behavior, it sounded like he was following her with the intent to assault her. There were 2 cars in the woman's driveway at the time, but the man seemed aware that she was home alone, indicating that he may have even cased her residence ahead of time. Despite this, he was spared from any major charges and was released from custody with a criminal citation for trespassing. Following the disturbing incident, Williams expressed her frustration with law enforcement's long response time to her 911 call. She used the experience as an opportunity to urge people, especially women, to be vigilant about their safety. Williams went on to say that she already owned a taser and that she now planned on pursuing a pistol permit. 12. Angry arsonist. While responding to an emergency call in 2019, firefighters in Del City, Oklahoma arrived to find the home of Christopher Bottoms fully engulfed in flames. As they fought to extinguish the blaze, neighbor Annie Durham told local news station KFOR that she realized the house was on fire after she saw smoke spewing from the residence. She described the home as a drug house. Investigators soon learned that Durham was entangled in a years-long rivalry with the homeowner and that their disputes had landed them in the courtroom a number of times. Durham allegedly gave investigators conflicting stories regarding her whereabouts when the fire broke out, claiming in one version of events that she wasn't even home. After noticing that she had a surveillance camera on the outside of her house, detectives asked her for the footage, but she was suspiciously reluctant to hand it over, claiming that the camera was turned off at the time. Detectives eventually got their hands on the video, which showed Durham firing 2 shots into Bottom's house, returning inside briefly and coming back outside with a flaming rag, which she threw directly into a doorway. She was charged with second-degree arson. Speaking with KFOR, Bottoms acknowledged that the feud between him and Durham went both ways, and that he wasn't always the best neighbor. And while he never thought Durham would go as far as she did, he said that he forgave her. Bottoms also admitted to struggling with addiction and having shady guests in and out of his home over the years. After suddenly becoming homeless due to the fire, he checked into rehab. 11. Elderly man confronts killer. After immigrating to California from Vietnam in the late 90s, John Pham moved into the El Centrico apartment complex in Garden Grove, where he lived peacefully for more than 20 years. Needless to say, Pham's adult sons were shocked when they received an alert from the 87-year-old's doorbell camera in November 2023 that appeared to show an intruder entering their dad's apartment. One of the sons immediately rushed over to the residence, while another relative FaceTimed Pham in an attempt to check on him. The intruder answered the phone and yelled at the caller. Pham's son arrived to find his father lying on the floor covered in blood, with his hands bound together by a phone cable. The intruder was still there and trying to flee, but Pham's son ran after him and pinned him to the ground with help from neighbors. They held the suspect down until the police arrived, and Pham died from his injuries at the scene. According to law enforcement, there were no weapons found at the scene, but investigators said the killer may have used a household object to beat the elderly victim to death. In the video captured by Pham's security camera, the senior citizen could be seen talking with the intruder near the front door. It's unclear what the two were discussing in the footage, but the killer spent over an hour at the residence. Pham's daughter-in-law, Tam Doan, told Fox LA that the family had installed the camera in Pham's living room after he was diagnosed with dementia. They respected his wishes not to have a camera installed in his bedroom, where he was killed. Pham was remembered by his neighbors and loved ones as a kind-hearted family man who enjoyed taking walks in his neighborhood. She suspects that the killer followed her father-in-law home from one of his usual strolls. Police identified the suspect as a 26-year-old homeless man named Mario Brancato. He was charged with murder with the special circumstance of murder during a robbery and a sentencing enhancement for attempted premeditated murder. The special circumstance and sentencing enhancement mean that Brancato will stand to face a harsher punishment than a traditional murder charge normally carries if he's convicted as charged. 10. Cop impersonator goes on crime spree. In November 2022, a Good Samaritan in Orem, Utah allowed a distressed young woman to seek refuge in his home after witnessing a man trying to get in her vehicle. Later identified as 44-year-old Oscar Kolob Garcia Castorena, the man soon showed up at the residence and repeatedly claimed to be a police officer from a neighboring city. The homeowner's doorbell camera recorded the interaction as he asked Garcia Castorena to leave and told him that he was scaring some kids who were at the house for a party. In response, the suspect threatened to hurt the homeowner multiple times and asked him if he was also scared. An arrest affidavit described how Garcia Castorena was the subject of several suspicious persons reports earlier that day, claiming that he was trying to lure young women into his vehicle. During that same week, police investigated multiple complaints of slashed tires involving 17 vehicles belonging to 12 victims. Once again, surveillance footage connected Garcia Castorena to the crimes. The suspect was hit with a half-dozen charges stemming from the crime spree including DUI, disorderly conduct, giving false information to police, burglary, criminal mischief, and impersonating a police officer. 9. Murdered husband's last words. In what one judge described as the most horrific crime he could recall in his 25 years on the bench, Robert Penn was viciously stabbed to death and disemboweled outside his Paducah, Kentucky home early one morning in October 2022. Responding officers arrived to find the victim dead in the street, his head nearly decapitated, his wrists nearly severed, and his internal organs outside of his body. Robert's wife, 41-year-old Kachina Penn, told police that she and her husband had been attacked by a robber during a 3 a.m. walk. During the investigation that ensued, a self-described friend of the couple, William Tabor, told detectives that Kachina had asked him if he knew anyone who could bump off her husband. In a text exchange between the two, Kachina described how she hated Robert's guts and looked forward to the day he'd be gone. Tabor was having an affair with Kachina at the time, but he refused to have any involvement in her murderous plan. He said he didn't know anyone who would be willing to kill Robert, leading police to believe that Kachina took things into her own hands. Doorbell camera footage showed a person being chased down the street and screaming, "No, baby, no," further adding to law enforcement's suspicions that Robert died at his wife's hands. Witnesses confirmed that the screaming person was Robert Penn, and authorities charged Kachina with first-degree murder. She was found guilty in December 2023 and was sentenced to life in prison. During Kachina's sentencing hearing, her defense attorney urged for leniency and mentioned the possibility that his client could eventually be rehabilitated. The judge disagreed, but under state law, Kachina will likely become eligible for parole after serving 20 years due to her lack of a prior criminal history. 8. A kidnapping in Philly. 22-year-old Carlesha Freeland Gaither was walking home in Philadelphia one night in 2014 when a stranger snatched her off the street and forced her into his car. Harrowing footage of the abduction showed the young woman trying desperately to fight off her kidnapper as he overpowered her. During the struggle, she dropped her glasses and phone on the sidewalk, and they were left behind. A multi-state manhunt ensued over the next few days as leads began to trickle in. The first clue to Carlesha's whereabouts came when a man used her ATM card in Aberdeen, Maryland. Soon after that, a woman living in nearby Havre de Grace found a bag containing garbage and a receipt in her driveway. Sensing that it might have something to do with the case, she reported the discovery. Surveillance footage from the store listed on the receipt confirmed the suspected kidnapper had been in there. In the meantime, ATF agents who were investigating the suspect for other reasons recognized his car in the video of Carlesha's abduction and identified him as 37-year-old Delvin Barnes. They tracked Barnes through a GPS device that was installed on his car due to his bad credit and arrested him in a parking lot. At the time, he was under suspicion for kidnapping another young woman. He took a plea deal and admitted to both crimes in exchange for a 35-year sentence. 7. The murder of Madison Harris. On the afternoon of February 24, 2020, Mississippi resident James Waldeck's Ring camera alerted him to some activity going on outside his home in Biloxi. He opened the app connected to the camera and saw that there was an ambulance outside the house, which he shared with his fiancée and her 16-year-old granddaughter, Madison Harris. Video captured by another doorbell camera showed Madison entering the house about a half hour before 4 teenagers stormed into the residence and fatally shot the young woman. The shooting could be heard just moments after the intruders entered, along with Madison's terrified screams. They were easily identified thanks to the Ring footage and were soon charged with capital murder. Waldeck recognized some of the suspects as Madison's friends, but thought back to how the family's home had been burglarized a few weeks earlier. He theorized that the killers shot her as revenge for reporting the burglary to the authorities. The day the teen shot Madison, police believe they originally went there to commit a robbery, while Waldeck suspected that they went there with the intent to murder her. There haven't been any updates since their arrests. 6. Construction worker turned killer. In July of 2023, 58-year-old Sharon Gordon was bludgeoned to death in her home in the English town of Dudley. The devoted Jehovah's Witness was found lying at the bottom of a staircase with severe skull fractures from being bashed in the head with a hammer at least 8 times. During the investigation, investigators uncovered doorbell camera footage that showed a bricklayer entering and leaving Gordon's home on the day of the murder. Identified as 43-year-old Peter Norgrave, he'd become a certified bricklayer after losing his job during the COVID-19 pandemic. Also a Jehovah's Witness, he met Gordon through their Kingdom Hall. More than a year before the murder, Gordon paid Norgrave £29,000 to build an extension on her house. Norgrave agreed to complete the job within 2 months, but the project was still unfinished at the time of Gordon's death. According to investigators, Norgrave had overheard Gordon and 2 of her friends criticizing his work on the day of the murder. Less than a half hour after the friends left, he could be seen putting on a pair of gloves and entering the house. Just moments later, Gordon's doorbell camera captured the horrifying sounds of Gordon screaming in terror and the thump of the hammer striking her in the head. The footage went silent after 18 seconds. Around 20 minutes after entering the house, Norgrave went back outside and whistled to himself while he calmly packed his work equipment into his car. He had a visible blood stain on his right calf, but seemed unfazed by what he'd just done. During the drive home, Norgrave stomped at his mother-in-law's house, where he dumped his bloody clothes into her outdoor garbage and hid the murder weapon in her shed. Later that evening, he led a service at the Kingdom Hall where he'd befriended Gordon. Norgrave's wife Rebecca told the Daily Mail that she found the bloody clothing and turned it over to the police. She said she knew it was the right thing to do, even though she stood by her husband throughout his trial. Rebecca admitted that Peter had brutally murdered Gordon, yet insisted he was a good and kind man. She claimed her husband had no recollection of the attack and blamed his actions on a psychotic episode. In her mind, there was no way that the gentleman she knew would have planned such a horrific act of violence. In early 2024, Norgrave was found guilty of Gordon's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. 5. The murder of Stephen Perkins. Early one morning in September 2023, police officers in Decatur, Alabama accompanied a tow truck driver to the home of 39-year-old Stephen Perkins in an attempt to repossess a car. But something went terribly wrong, and Perkins was fatally shot by one of the officers during a confrontation outside the residence. In a statement, the police claimed that Perkins had threatened the tow truck driver with a gun and that he refused officers' commands to drop the weapon. According to law enforcement, the decision to use deadly force was when Perkins pointed the gun at a responding officer. But this narrative was challenged by neighbors, who came forward with doorbell and security camera footage that appeared to show a much different interaction than the one described by the police. In the video, Perkins could be seen going outside to confront the tow truck driver. The moment he stepped out the door, the trio of cops emerged from behind the house with their weapons drawn. Perkins was shot just seconds later. The security footage wasn't detailed enough to depict exactly what happened in the few moments leading up to the shooting, but it was inconsistent enough with law enforcement's narrative for people to demand the release of body cam footage. It also proved that the officer who shot Perkins pulled the trigger almost immediately after telling him to get on the ground, giving him essentially no opportunity to comply with the order. While the authorities refused to share the footage, Police Chief Todd Pinion issued a statement admitting that the officers had not ordered Perkins to drop his gun, but to get on the ground. Pinions also admitted that Perkins therefore did not refuse to drop his weapon like the agency had originally claimed. The public response to the shady facts surrounding the case was overwhelming. Unlike many past instances of police officers shooting black men in America, the vast majority of the community condemned law enforcement for its alleged failure to handle the situation without lethal force. Protesters of all races voiced their outrage and turned up at city council meetings in droves to demand justice for Perkins. Following an investigation, prosecutors charged one of the responding officers, 23-year-old Mac Bailey Marquette, with murder. He spent just 36 minutes in custody before being released on a $30,000 bond. Marquette and 2 other officers were fired while a 4th was suspended without pay. In early 2024, Marquette pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. Shortly after the shooting, Perkins's family told the media that they'd found receipts proving that he was not behind on his trunk payments and that the vehicle should not have been slated for repossession in the first place. It's unclear if these claims are true, but either way, it does not justify the unprovoked ambush that took Perkins' life. 4. New Year's Day abduction. Las Vegas police were baffled on New Year's Day in 2020 when a resident's doorbell camera captured footage of a woman in ripped clothing running up to their porch in the middle of the night. She banged frantically on the door while looking over her shoulder at a car in the road. Moments later, a man emerged from the car and sprinted over. He grabbed the woman by her hair, threw her onto the ground and kicked her in the midsection, ripping a Christmas wreath off the door and sending her tumbling down the porch steps. As she fell to her knees, a potted plant crashed along with her. The man can be heard asking, "Why would you do that?" and ordering her to get in the car as he tried pulling her off the ground. He yanked her to her feet and continued to yell at her. She pleaded with her attacker to stop as he dragged her back to the car and drove away. The footage picked up audio of the woman calling the man Darius, but the homeowner didn't recognize the pair and neither did the police, who appealed to the public for help identifying the people in the video. Tips led them to 23-year-old Darnell Rogers. According to an arrest report, Rogers and his girlfriend were driving home from a New Year's Eve party with their child in the backseat when they began to argue. It became heated, so the woman pulled over and ran to the house for help. Rogers told police that he was drunk at the time and said that he was worried about his girlfriend leaving him. He pleaded guilty to coercion and domestic battery and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. In deciding his punishment, the judge considered the wishes of the victim, Darren Couillard, who asked for leniency. By then, the couple had broken up but had a child together, and Couillard said that Rogers had changed and was an outstanding father. 3. Murderous teen calls 911 on herself. 39-year-old Irina Garcia was at her home in Hialeah, Florida with her newborn in October 2023, when her doorbell camera captured a brief conversation between her and her teenage son, Derek Rosa. In the video, Rosa could be heard asking his mother in Spanish, "Why do you always tell me don't run?" The calm exchange of words stood in stark contrast to the horror that occurred inside the apartment later that night. Just hours after the conversation between Garcia and her son, Rosa called 911 and reported that it stabbed his mother to death. The call was captured on video, which also showed Rosa opening the front door of the apartment as responding officers approached. He was still on the phone with 911 when the cops arrived and could be heard asking the dispatcher if he should leave the residence. The operator calmly instructed him to stay where he was, and responding officers found Garcia dead near her baby's crib with dozens of stab wounds. After arriving at the police station, Rosa gave a videotaped confession, during which he admitted to stabbing his mother to death with a kitchen knife while she slept in her bed. Crime scene photos captured by a nearby baby monitor camera appeared to show the young man standing over Garcia just moments before the attack. Before calling the police, Rosa reportedly sent 2 photos of his mother's body to an online friend. He also sent his friend a selfie, which appeared to show the teen posing with blood on his hands. Rosa now faces a murder charge and is currently in jail awaiting trial. Prosecutors plan to try him as an adult, which means he'll face life in prison without parole if convicted as charged. During a court hearing, a detective testified that Rosa had conducted several internet searches before the murder, including "What's the best place to stab someone? Is a small knife good for killing? And can a knife cut through bone?" Authorities have not revealed an alleged motive for the crime, and the accused killer's garnered a large following of supporters who believe he's innocent despite his confession. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. 2. The murder of Jamie Faith. The sleepy Oak Cliff neighborhood of Dallas, Texas was shaken to its core one morning in October 2020 when local resident Jamie Faith was gunned down in broad daylight. Jamie and his wife Jennifer were walking their dog when a man approached them from behind an open fire, shooting Jamie multiple times. The horrific crime was captured on video by several residents' doorbell cameras, along with the shocked homeowners' reactions to the shooting. Jamie was shot 7 times and died from his injuries, while Jennifer was curiously left unharmed. She went on the news and pleaded with the public to come forward with information that could help lead to the murderer's identification and capture. In the meantime, the community rallied around Jennifer, raising more than $60,000 in donations to help her with her bills and living expenses. But Jennifer was no grieving widow, according to prosecutors, who eventually discovered that she was having an affair with the pickup truck's owner at the time of Jamie's death. U.S. Army veteran Darren Ruben Lopez had dated Jennifer years earlier, before she married Jamie, and they'd recently reconnected online. They began an intense long-distance affair that was carried out mostly over email, with Jennifer making shocking claims of horrific abuse at the hands of her husband. The stories infuriated Lopez, who felt a duty to protect Jennifer. Unaware that his paramour was preying on his protective instincts and his desire to be a hero, Lopez believed Jennifer's claims that she couldn't escape the abuse by going to the police or simply leaving. She convinced Lopez that the only way to make the abuse stop was by killing Jamie. After the murder, neighbors and friends insisted that Jamie had never shown any signs of being abusive toward Jennifer, and that Jennifer had never shown any signs of being abused, leading detectives to believe that Jennifer had lied about the abuse entirely. As far as anyone could tell, Jamie was a doting husband who adored Jennifer and had adopted her son from a previous relationship. In addition to pressuring Lopez to kill Jamie, Jennifer allegedly sent Lopez emails posing as a friend, backing up her stories and emphasizing the urgent need for Jamie to die. Lopez took the bait and drove from Tennessee to Texas to carry out the crime. According to prosecutors, Jennifer was bored with Jamie. She wanted out of the marriage but was not interested in a divorce. Jamie was worth more to Jennifer dead than he was alive, owing to a nearly $700,000 life insurance policy that she stood to collect in the event of his untimely death. Jennifer tried cashing in on the policy, but the insurance company refused to issue the payout as long as Jamie's murder remained unsolved. In the meantime, she squandered the fundraiser donations on needless luxuries, including a big screen TV and other gifts for her husband's assassin. Following a months-long investigation, federal authorities charged Jennifer Faith and Darren Lopez with Jamie's murder. Jennifer pleaded guilty to using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire and was sentenced to life without parole. Lopez was convicted of murder by a Texas jury and sentenced to 62 years in state prison. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. From college dropout to convicted criminal. In September 2019, police in Youngstown, Ohio rushed to an address on the city's south side after receiving reports of gunfire. They arrived at the home to find 2 injured victims and a small fire in the kitchen. 33-year-old Jamie Traylor and 27-year-old Clarissa Lucky told investigators that the ordeal began when they heard a knock. One of them answered the door to find a woman standing in front of a man. Without warning, the man shot the resident and the burglars pushed their way into the house. The injured resident played dead, then crawled into their basement. In the meantime, the intruders shot the other resident in the face. Both victims survived with injuries. A few days after the crime, authorities issued warrants for 38-year-old Nicole Taylor and 46-year-old Robert Young, who were seen entering the home in doorbell camera footage. The suspects spent 5 months on the run before finally turning themselves in early 2020. They both bonded out while awaiting trial, but Young failed to show for his next court date and has been on the run ever since. He previously served prison time for murder in Michigan, making his current absence especially alarming. Taylor, a former pre-med student who traded in her promising future for the life-ruining decision to commit a violent crime, pleaded guilty to aggravated burglary and attempted murder. Her lawyer argued that she didn't realize Young planned to shoot the victims. But under Ohio law, she had a duty to try stopping him and didn't. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison for her role in the crime and has unsuccessfully tried to appeal her case.
Number 10. Big Brother is watching. One morning in 2018, Tennessee resident Hunter Hollingsworth noticed a hidden camera on his hunting property in Camden. He removed it from a tree and found photos of himself and of state and federal wildlife agents on the device. Soon enough, agents descended on his property, geared up as if they were part of a SWAT team. They handcuffed Hollingsworth and searched his entire house, but found nothing criminal. Hollingsworth soon learned that his neighbor, Terry Rainwaters, had discovered 2 hidden cameras on his property. Rainwaters told local station WKRN that one of the cameras was pointed in the direction of his workshop next to his house. The cameras evidently appeared after Rainwater's son and some of his friends were charged the previous year with illegal baiting as part of a government investigation called Operation Bird Dog. But unlike Hollingsworth, who's faced poaching charges in the past, Rainwaters himself had never been charged with a wildlife violation. It was as if he was considered guilty by association due to his son's past, and he was extremely unhappy about the unapproved devices being placed on his property. After the cameras appeared, locals contacted the news, which questioned whether the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, TWRA, is allowed to go on people's private land. Reporters had a tough time getting direct answers, and an agency spokesperson refused to comment on specific cases, but they discovered that there's a federal legal loophole that allows for it, known as the Open Fields Doctrine. Apparently, the Fourth Amendment, which protects people's rights against unreasonable searches and seizures, doesn't protect open fields. Because of this, both the TWRA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife are allowed to install cameras on portions of people's land that fit the criteria of an open field. Still, this differs from state law, which is worded slightly differently. Both Rainwaters and Hollingsworth filed a civil lawsuit against the TWRA for invading their land. They only sued for $1, though, because the matter wasn't about money to them. The judge overseeing the case ruled in favor of the landowners, making a milestone win for private property owners throughout Tennessee. Thanks to the men fighting for what they believed was right, the TWRA now needs a warrant to enter someone's property, regardless of whether it's considered an open field or not. The agency argued that wildlife crimes will go up due to the landmark ruling, but the only way to know whether this is true will be to wait and see what the future holds. Number 9. A fishy find in Florida. In 2017, Derek Starnes and his wife traveled from Indiana to Longboat Key along Florida's Gulf Coast. They rented a condo belonging to a reputable owner who was active for more than 2 years on the vacation rental site they used and had more than 40 reviews. After arriving at the property, Starnes noticed a small black hole on the side of a smoke detector in the bedroom. He took a closer look and saw that it resembled a small camera, and then he noticed that it was positioned toward the bed. The couple called the police, who agreed that the device was a camera, and arrested the homeowner, 56-year-old Wayne Nat, who had no priors at the time. Upon learning of the allegations, the vacation rental company banned Nat from its website. Speaking with local station WFLA-TV, Starnes said that he was distressed about the camera, which he said captured images of his wife undressed. Shortly after the story broke, Longboat Key Police Chief Peter Cumming told Inside Edition that the investigation was just beginning and could take months since there could be more victims. Nat was ultimately charged with 14 counts of non-consensual videotaping in 3 separate cases. He took a deal and pleaded guilty in exchange for a year in prison plus 2 years of probation. Under the terms of the agreement, he was banned from having contact with the victims and was required to undergo mental health treatment that the judge deemed necessary. Number 8. Consequences for creepy coach. 53-year-old David Arthur Ryden was working as an assistant high school football coach in Rancho Cucamonga, California, when he was busted for placing a hidden camera in a girl's locker room in 2021. By the time an employee discovered the device, which was disguised as a phone charger, it had taken footage of at least 20 victims. But as it turned out, there were many more. Ryden was arrested and eventually pleaded guilty to possessing more than 600 unlawful images. As a result, he was sentenced to 9 years and 4 months in prison. For many, the sentence wasn't enough to make them feel safe again. At least 48 alleged victims are being represented by the famed women's rights attorney Gloria Allred in their lawsuits against Ryden. Allred says that several of her clients fear that the footage and images of them may appear online someday, and she also brought up the likelihood that there are many more victims who are unaware that they were taped. Besides the clients represented by Allred, there are others who are suing under the representation of different lawyers. The San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office, on the other hand, seemed to find the sentence sufficient, especially since it enabled victims to avoid a potentially lengthy and traumatic trial. One of Allred's clients, who spoke with News Nation, described how the experience ruined her and how she's lost all trust in people. She now suffers from anxiety and depression, leaving her in an emotional limbo of sorts, significantly affecting her life and future plans. Allred said that her goal is to figure out why the hidden camera wasn't discovered sooner, which would have spared many people emotional and mental trauma. Number 7. Disgruntled renter discovers spy device. A young woman had recently graduated college and was proud to be on her own for the first time when she rented a room in Colorado Springs in 2022. Her family was proud of her too, although her father admittedly worried that someone might slip something in her drink or do something else to harm her while she was out alone. Her newfound independence hit an unexpected snag when she received some bizarre text messages from her roommate's boyfriend. The unwanted correspondence made the young woman feel like she was being watched. She put 2 and 2 together when she noticed there were 2 smoke alarms in her room and that one of them was suspiciously positioned directly above her bed. A photo search of the device turned up ads for a spy camera disguised as a smoke alarm. By then, the woman had only been living in her new space for 3 nights, but she was concerned about what the camera had already recorded. She told her father, Dan Farrell, who moved her out of the room and into a new place. The family also called the police, who believe they found hidden devices in an outlet in addition to the fake smoke detector. They issued a criminal summons against a suspect named Jameel Brown for criminal invasion of privacy. In light of the incident, law enforcement cautioned the public to thoroughly search rented spaces for hidden cameras. Public Information Officer Robert Tornabine told Fox 21 News that if the devices between rooms look different, it may suggest that at least one of them is an aftermarket product that requires additional inspection. He further explained that one way to detect a hidden camera is to shine a flashlight toward the device and see if the surface is highly reflective, which would indicate the presence of a lens. Number 6. Repeat recorder. In 2022, a woman from Tampa, Florida accused her Homeowners Association president of hiding a camera in her bedroom and secretly recording her. An investigation found evidence that he installed the device while the victim was out of state. The woman didn't know about the camera until she discovered it hidden in a flower pot. Sheriff's deputies uncovered video footage of at least 2 people in a state of undress, including the homeowner and a man who stayed there temporarily. HOA President Robert Orr, who also worked as a caretaker, had permission to enter the woman's condo to check on the condition of it while she allowed other people to stay there. While carrying out a search warrant on Orr's residence, police found several other cameras and devices that could arguably be used for spying on people. Orr was charged with 4 counts of video voyeurism, but that was just the beginning of his alleged campaign of perverted crimes. Orr was apprehended 2 more times in the months following his first arrest, after more victims came forward with evidence against him. Since then, investigators have identified at least 4 victims in cases dating as far back as 2018, whom they say were unknowingly being recorded by Orr. He's now facing 12 counts of video voyeurism and 6 counts of unlawful use of a 2-way communications device. Apparently, authorities believe there may be more victims out there. Number 5. Rio de Janeiro trip turns into real-life nightmare. Ana Lucia Becerra and Julia Stopper were looking forward to a relaxing getaway at their rented beachfront property in Rio de Janeiro during the 2022 holiday season. But they were horrified to find a hidden camera in their Airbnb after traveling 800 miles, 1,287 kilometers, from Goiânia, Brazil, to get there. According to the couple, who shared their experience with the local media, it wasn't a conventional security camera either. Stopper told the press that she noticed something glimmering on the wall of the bedroom. She and Becerra took a closer look and quickly discovered that it was a camera pointed toward the bed. The pair filmed themselves unscrewing the covering that was presumably meant to conceal the lens. Becerra told the press that based on the camera's location, there was no way the property owner could claim it was for security purposes. She and Stopper reported the discovery to police and to Airbnb. In the end, the company refunded the couple and issued a statement reassuring the public that they're willing and ready to help law enforcement get to the bottom of things. Number 4. Creepy colleague. A female office employee in Mandaluyong City, Philippines, was shocked to discover a hidden camera in the women's bathroom near a designated relaxation area in early 2023. She noticed something that didn't look quite right on the sink, and after taking a closer look at it, she realized it was a recording device wrapped in foil. The discovery was serious enough for investigators from the Philippine National Police's anti-cybercrime group to get involved. They learned from the woman that she noticed one particular colleague spending a suspicious amount of time near the restroom. After learning of the complaint, the office employees banded together and performed a citizen's arrest on their co-worker, 49-year-old Wilfredo Torres Mendoza. They then held him in their custody until the police arrived. A law enforcement spokesperson clarified that the team took matters into their own hands when Mendoza tried to escape. And now that he's been turned over to the police, he faces a slew of charges under the country's Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act, the Violence Against Women and Children's Act, and the Safe Space Act. Number 3. College Imposter. In November 2022, a visitor at the University of Utah Student Life Center in Salt Lake City discovered a camera taped to the underside of a sink in a restroom. He removed the device and turned it over to staff members who reported the situation to campus police. A thorough search of the building turned up one more camera in another bathroom by the center's pool, where it was positioned toward a changing area. The cameras had captured footage of several nude men who told authorities that they never gave anyone permission to film them. Investigators identified the owner of the cameras to be 32-year-old Frederick William Whites III, who wasn't an employee or a student of the university. In his car, police found recording equipment, thumb drives, and micro SD cards. Whites was accused of stealing a co-worker's student ID to gain access to the building and was charged with felony forgery, burglary, possession of forgery devices, and identity fraud. He was also handed 5 counts of misdemeanor voyeurism. Whites has yet to be sentenced for his crimes, and at the moment, his case is ongoing. Number 2. Voyeurism in Vidalia. When the Concordia Parish Sheriff's Office executed a search warrant on a property in Vidalia, Louisiana in 2022, they expected to find evidence of an illegal drug operation. And they did. However, they were surprised to find evidence of human trafficking, including a hidden camera that captured footage of victims without their knowledge. Deputies seized drugs and multiple electronic devices containing over 30 files depicting evidence of voyeurism. The videos allegedly showed victims engaging in intimate acts without knowing they were being filmed. 50-year-old Brian Melton was charged with 33 counts of voyeurism, as well as possession of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 narcotics with intent to sell. According to the most recent update, 3 other suspects were arrested and charged in connection with the case, which remains under investigation. Number 1. Alarm clock camera. In 2018, 34-year-old Dougie Hamilton and his girlfriend Taryn discovered what appeared to be a hidden camera in their rented vacation home in Toronto, Canada. By the time they found the device, which was hidden in an alarm clock, the couple feared it may have already captured a video of them. They were relaxing on the sofa when they noticed that the clock looked odd for some reason. Hamilton sat and stared at the suspicious-looking object, while Taryn became increasingly frustrated because he was ignoring her. Right as she was about to lose her temper, Hamilton unplugged the clock and slid off the front faceplate, revealing what looked like a camera lens. Naturally, the couple reported the discovery to Airbnb, and the company reassured them that it would investigate. They also called the police, who vowed to look into the matter. Luckily, Airbnb refunded the couple and moved them to another accommodation.
Thanks for watching. What would be more terrifying? Discovering surveillance of a creepy clown lurking outside your home, or footage of a stranger testing your front door and windows to see if they're unlocked? Let us know in the comments below, but be sure to subscribe first. See you soon. Bye.